Kate Sebastian from EDC Vietnam Bureau, bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines, the Myanmar junta troops torched dozens of houses across 3 villages in a restive northern region last week. That according to villagers and the local media, as the junta struggles to crush resistance to its rule.
The Philippine Coast Guard has accused its Chinese counterpart of steering one of its ships within meters of a Filipino patrol vessel in the disputed South China Sea, breaking international rules and risking a collision.
And as President Duterte marks his 77th birthday, today his birthday wish is for a clean, fair, and honest elections come May 9.
INC members in Hanoi respond to the call of government to donate blood.
First in our news, the Myanmar junta troops torched dozens of houses across 3 villages in a restive northern region last week. That according to villagers and local media, as the junta struggles to crush resistance to its rule. Take a look. The Southeast Asian country has been in chaos since a putsch last February, with anti-coup People's Defense Force fighters clashing with junta troops across the nation. The northern Sagaing region has seen fierce fighting and bloody reprisals, with the junta calling in airstrikes and reports of widespread soldiers burning villages. Local Ko Kiao said troops arrived in Tamok village in Kin-U Township in the afternoon of March 15, and this footage obtained by AFP from the 3 villages showed ruined buildings, blackened trees, and piles of smoldering ash. Some houses were still standing. The junta has previously rebuffed claims its troops have torched houses, accusing terrorist People's Defense Force fighters of starting the fires. In mid-December, the United States and United Nations condemned the junta for what Washington described as credible and sickening reports of the killing of 11 villagers, including children, in the Sagaing region. Meanwhile, Malacanang urged residents near the vicinity of Taal volcano to remain vigilant after its latest activity triggered Alert Level 3 status. In a press statement, acting presidential spokesperson Mantin Ardenar said the executive department is closely monitoring the situation in areas near Taal volcano. He said, "We urge all residents of affected barangays and communities to remain alert and vigilant, get news updates from trusted sources and authorities, and cooperate with concerned agencies while the volcano situation is being monitored for any developments." Ardenar said the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council and its regional counterparts and local government units are implementing all relevant precautionary measures, including evacuation of high-risk communities near the volcano island, as well as fishermen in Taal Lake. He said the Department of Social Welfare and Development has quick response teams and standby stockpile of food and non-food items to augment local supplies when needed. As of Sunday morning, there are 854 families or 2,894 persons inside 12 evacuation centers in Calabarzon, which comprises the provinces of Cavite, Laguna, Batangas, Rizal, and Quezon. Taal volcano's alert status was raised to alert level 3, meaning magmatic unrest on Saturday due to a phreatomagmatic eruption, an explosion that occurs when magma and water interact. Meanwhile, people living near the Taal volcano fled their homes after the eruption sent ash and steam hundreds of meters into the sky. One woman complains that she will lose money after being forced to close her shop because of the evacuation. Let's listen into some reactions.
Malaking usok ko. Doble yung usok ko doon, sa gitna niya. Napakataas, ang itim-itim. Bandang uli, nawala rin. Naging yung parang lumakad yung usok din sa dagat. Parang hindi na makakita ang tao kung nasa dagat ka. Hindi mo makikita na nasa dagat. Ay, natakot po kami. Nabiglao kami. Biglaan na lang. Yun, gano'n kami. Nagtakbuhan na nga kami din. Mataas-taas dito kaysa sa amin doon.
Yung mga iniwan namin, mga idadaingin ko, iniwan ko na. Pati yung mga isasampay namin, bahala na dyan. Basta ligpit na. Pati bahay, kahit bukas, iniwanan na. Basta may likas ko lang rin dahil wala nga ako yung mister ko nasa lako. Naku po, wala na naman kita. O, paano yan? Ang naroon ng daingin ko, isang sako, hindi ko na madaing, itatapon na naman. Yung tindahan ko, sarado na naman doon.
The initial eruption was followed by nearly continuous phreatomagmatic activity that sent plumes stretching 1,500 meters into the air, according to the Seismological Agency, raising the alert level from 2 to 3 on a scale of 0 to 5. A phreatomagmatic eruption happens when molten rock comes into contact with underground or surface water, according to Princess Cosalan, a scientist at the agency, likening it to pouring water on a hot pan. Cosalan told AFP that ash and steam emissions had quietened in the hours after the initial burst, but she said the institute's on-site sensors continued to detect volcanic earthquakes, and another eruption they said was possible. The agency's chief, Renato Solidum, said the activity was weaker than in January 2020 when Taal shot ash 15 kilometers high and spewed red-hot lava, crushing scores of homes, killing livestock, and sending tens of thousands into shelters. And the Philippine Coast Guard has accused its Chinese counterpart of steering one of its ships within meters of a Filipino patrol vessel in the disputed South China Sea, breaking international rules and risking a collision. Take a look. Now, the incident happened on March 2 near the contested Scarborough Shoal, one of the region's richest fishing grounds and a flashpoint between the two countries, but was only made public yesterday, Sunday. It was the fourth time in the past year that a Chinese Coast Guard vessel had conducted close-distance maneuvering near the shoal, according to the Philippine Coast Guard in a statement. And China seized Scarborough from the Philippines in 2012 following a tense standoff. The Southeast Asian country continues to patrol the waters around the shoal, which is inside its exclusive economic zone. PCG Chief Admiral Artemio Abu said the behavior of the involved China Coast Guard vessels increased the risk of collision with 4 of our capital ships, unquote. In the March 2 incident, the PCG said the Chinese vessel came within about 19 meters of its patrol boat, which was in clear violation of the 1972 international regulations for preventing collisions at sea. The PCG has referred the matter to the Foreign Ministry, which recently summoned China's ambassador over a separate incident involving a Chinese Navy ship lingering in the Philippines' archipelagic waters. Abu said his agency was under government orders to maintain patrols near Scarborough Shoal, where Filipino fishermen continue to fish. Meanwhile, the Department of Transportation, or DOTR Secretary Art Tugade, has directed the PCG to continue upholding its mission of promoting the safety of life and property at sea and enforcing all applicable laws within the Philippine waters in support of national development.
Sounding a warning regarding another massive coronavirus wave, World Health Organization Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus asserted after several weeks of declines, reported cases of COVID-19 are once again increasing globally, especially in parts of Asia.
After several weeks of declines, reported cases of COVID-19 are once again increasing globally, especially in parts of Asia. These increases are occurring despite reductions in testing in some countries, which means the cases we're seeing are just the tip of the iceberg. And we know that when cases increase, so do deaths. Continued local outbreaks and surges are to be expected, particularly in areas where measures to prevent transmission have been lifted. However, there are unacceptably high levels of mortality in many countries, especially where vaccination levels are low among susceptible populations. Each country is facing a different situation with different challenges, but the pandemic is not over. I repeat, the pandemic is not over. We call on all countries to remain vigilant, continue to vaccinate, test, sequence, provide early care for patients, and apply common sense public health measures to protect health workers and the public.
This comes as new infections jumped by 8% globally last week compared to the previous 2 weeks. As per WHO, the number of new coronavirus deaths reported worldwide fell by 17% in the last week, while COVID-19 infections rose, reversing a decline in cases that first began in January. Thailand province of Surin is preparing for its endemic status from coronavirus. Let's find out what that means. Our Southeast Asia correspondent from Thailand, Veronica Carino, reports from Bangkok. Hello, Veronica.
Yes, hello, good afternoon, Eliana. The province of Surin, which is in the east central of Thailand, is said to be the first province to declare COVID-19 spread to be endemic. According to local authorities, it hopes to do so by Friday, 3 months ahead of the national target. Surin's provincial governor, Suwampun Kiti Patarapibun, stated that the province is prepared to do so because residents have worked hard to maintain public health safety under the Public Health Ministry's COVID-free setting guidelines. Surin is ready to change the status of COVID-19 to endemic beginning April 1, according to the Provincial Public Health or Public Relations Office, which announced yesterday on Facebook. The office also advised people to get booster shots in order to boost their immunity. Locals are reminded that they must maintain public health safety practices to ensure that deaths do not exceed the 0.5% rate among caseloads. Meanwhile, the rate of hospitalization must not exceed 3% of infections, and 70% of residents must have received at least 2 vaccine doses. Simultaneously, people must maintain social distance, wear masks, wash their hands, check their temperatures in public places, and use the Thai Channel app, according to the post. From December 24 to Saturday, 54 infections with 29 fatalities. The province's decision to declare the disease is spread and endemic came after the Center of COVID-19 Situation Administration, or CCSA, reported that 11 provinces had reported more than 600 daily infections on average, indicating an increase in infection in those provinces. According to the COVID-19 Information Center, the National Communicable Disease Committee decided on March 10 to classify the spread of COVID-19 as an endemic, beginning on July 1st, with the Department of Disease Control expected to do so on the same day. However, early steps will be taken in advance of the new classification. According to the officials, the severity of infection is likely to decrease between March 12 and early next month if a goal is met. From April to May, officials must keep case loads low. And from the end of May and to the end of June, officials must keep daily infection numbers in each provinces between 1,000 and 2,000. This update is from Bangkok Post. Back to you, Eliana.
Thank you, Veronica, for your update there. Please do stay safe and healthy.
Yes, thank you. And likewise, reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand, I am Veronica Carino, and we live in interesting times.
Malaysia's health minister said its COVID app My Sejahtera has not been sold to any private entity and is still under government control. Our correspondent from Malaysia, Alfred Balmes, reports from Kuala Lumpur. Hello, Alfred.
Hi, Eliana. Good afternoon. According to Khairi Hamaluddin, My Sejahtera is fully owned by the government, with the Health Ministry as the main stakeholder. The Health Ministry, in a statement yesterday, clarified that the Health Ministry had never sold the application to any private entities to manage public health services. Khairi also reassured the public that data in the My Sejahtera applications was under the supervision of the Health Ministry and would not be shared with any government agency or private entities. My Sejahtera data comes under the Prevention and Control Infectious Diseases Act 1988, the Medical Act 1971, and international standard. He added that the data transaction from My Sejahtera applications are uploaded to cloud server network every day and can only be accessed for My Sejahtera use only. Khairi hoped the public would continue to use My Sejahtera application without hesitation, as the privacy of the public data is guaranteed and the Health Ministry will continue to ensure that this is not compromised. Khairi also said that the government had never made any payment to KPI Soft Serdian Berhad, which developed the application from March 27, 2020 until March 31, 2021. He said the company covered by My Sejahtera application to the government for a year without payment as a corporate social responsibility effort. Khairi was responding to the issue that of the ownership of the My Sejahtera application raised by opposition leader Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim in a Facebook post Sunday. He stated in his statement, since it was launched, the use of My Sejahtera application had been through the software as a service approach to reduce the turnaround time required to develop new software following the needs of a specialized system to manage the COVID-19 pandemic. He added that on the expiration of the CSR period, the government had on March 31, 2021 agreed for My Sejahtera services to be continued. Accordingly, Khairi said the government continues to cooperate with the company in implementing the improvement of My Sejahtera functions up to date. Back to you, Eliana.
Thank you, Alfred, for your update there in Malaysia. Please do always take care always.
Likewise, live reporting from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, this is Alfred Balmes. We live in interesting times.
Thailand's Test and Go scheme and Thailand Pass registration are expected to be scrapped by June 1 if COVID cases decrease. More from Jomerl Baldo joining us live from Bangkok. Hello, Jomerl.
Yes, hello, Aliana. That is correct. The kingdom's current tourism measures, like the Test and Go scheme and Thailand Pass registration, are studied to be scraped off as a policy starting June 1st. If no spike in infections or fatalities will be recorded during the Songkran Festival in April, the traditional New Year celebration in the country. This was announced by the Tourism and Sports Ministry officer, Mr. Tipat Darajakan. He said that Thailand started like a rabbit, which has run quickly last year in the reopening of borders to visitors. He also explained that the country shall not fall behind many nations, citing their strategies, which are tourism opening with fewer restrictions. With this, the government and tourism agencies had to work together to propose further relaxation of travel restrictions, allowing more tourists into the country to boost the economy. It could be noted that the Center for COVID-19 Situation Administration, or the CCSA, has recently dropped the policy on 72-hour pre-travel RT-PCR test for international arrivals starting April 1st. The next phase of the reopening is expected to take place on May 1st, where antigen test kit or ATK will replace the PCR testing. This technique is much more rapid and accessible to the future visitors. Mr. Pipat also said that the upcoming Songkran holidays will be a critical test for further easing of the rules. The number of daily cases, including results from ATK test in April, has to remain stable. A subsequent proposal will be submitted by the ministry in May after the monitoring, which can include the cancellation of the test and go scheme and Thailand pass. He, however, said that these proposals are subject for approval by the Public Health Ministry. It is previously forecasted that there could be 10 million arrivals this year, but with the Omicron surge and the Ukraine-Russian conflict, this tally might only reach 7 million. Thailand is currently ranked poorly at the 111 out of 140 countries in the 2019 Tourism Competitiveness Index and aims to rise to 100 in the next round. Let's go to Thailand's latest COVID-19 statistics. The country registered 81 fatalities and 24,635 new cases during the previous 24 hours. Back to you, Eliana.
Thank you, John Merle, for keeping us updated. You stay alert and stay safe.
You keep safe too. Reporting live from EBC Thailand Bureau, I am John Merle, Bundad Baldo, and we live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, in Singapore, the government will lift restrictions for all vaccinated travelers from next week, with Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong hailing it as a major step in the aviation hub's efforts to live with COVID-19. That will be this week. Let's listen in.
The Omicron situation is well under control. Nearly all our cases are domestic, originating within the community. Arrivals from abroad constitute only a very small proportion of cases. We can therefore safely open up our borders. We will drastically streamline testing and quarantine requirements for travelers. This simplified vaccination travel framework will let Singaporeans travel abroad more easily, almost like before COVID-19. It will also lift most restrictions for fully vaccinated visitors entering Singapore. This will reconnect Singapore with the world. It will give a much-needed boost to businesses, particularly the tourism sector. And it will help Singapore reclaim its position as a business and aviation hub. These domestic and cross-border changes represent a major step towards living with COVID-19. But they stop short of a complete opening up. We remain watchful because COVID-19 may yet bring further surprises.
At the start of the pandemic, the country of 5.5 million kept COVID cases low through border closures and a tough lockdown. It has faced sizable outbreaks since last year, and with some of the world's highest vaccination rates, authorities have shifted to a policy of living with the virus. The pandemic plunged Singapore into its worst ever recession in 2020 as the trading hub closed its borders. International visitor arrivals dropped to just 2.7 million that year from more than 19 million in 2019. Singapore's approach stands in contrast to rival financial hub Hong Kong, where arrivals are still required to undergo lengthy quarantines in hotels. Other countries in the Asia-Pacific that have recently announced an easing of travel restrictions include Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia, and Malaysia. And the news continues here in ASEAN in Focus. We'll be right back.
Hoy, Mr. Pwede! Masama at bawal ang pag-inom! Diyan ka na naman sa kakabawal mo, Mr. Bawal eh. Napaka-KJ mo.
Walang magandang dulot ang pag-inom. Lalo na't eleksyon ngayon. Bawal yan!
Ayon sa Omnibus Election Code, ang pagbibenta, pagbili o pag-inom ng alak sa araw ng eleksyon ay isang election offense.
Inggit ka lang. Oye, oye! Pakawalan niyo ako! Hindi na ako uulit!
Hay nako. Nasa uli talaga ang pagsisisi. Don't drink and vote. Ako si Mr. Bawal na nagpapaalala na hindi na nga mabuti ang pag-inom ng alak. Tapos sa eleksyon, gagawin mo pa? Bawal yan!
A public service message of Net25 for Mata ng Halalan 2022. Matatag, matapang, matapat.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Ay lalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Welcome back. The Philippines has joined 139 other countries in voting for a UN General Assembly or UNGA resolution on the scale of humanitarian woes caused by Russia's attack on Ukraine. During the 11th Emergency Special Session on March 24, the UNGA adopted the resolution on the humanitarian consequences of the aggression against Eastern European nation, with 140 countries, including the Philippines, voting in favor, 38 abstentions and 5 against, which is Russia, Syria, North Korea, Eritrea, and Belarus. In a statement last Friday, the European Union thanked the Philippine government for voting in favor of the resolution. The resolution recognizes that Russia's military offensive and its humanitarian consequences are on a scale that has not been seen in Europe in many decades. The Assembly demanded full protection for civilians, including humanitarian personnel, journalists, and persons in vulnerable situations, women and children among them. It further demanded full respect for all medical personnel and humanitarian personnel exclusively engaged in medical duties. Meanwhile, President Volodymyr Zelensky said his government is carefully considering a Russian demand of Ukrainian neutrality, a key point of contention as negotiators for both sides prepare for a French round of talks aimed at ending the brutal month-long war. He also said that the war can be quickly ended if only President Putin and his entourage will not delay it. Take a look.
Гарантеры ничего подписывать не будут, если у нас стоят войска. Почему я считаю, что войну можно быстро закончить и тянет только Путин и его окружение? Мы договориться должны с президентом Российской Федерации. А чтобы договориться, ему надо своими ногами выходить оттуда, где он там есть, и прийти навстречу ко мне. А я сказал, любую точку мира, кроме, считаю, беспредметные встречи в Беларуси, в России, в Украине. Сегодня.
He also said his country had received offers of support from Russian businessmen and that Kiev would give refuge to anyone who backed his country's fight against Moscow. A key demand from Putin, even before his troops rolled into Ukraine on February 24, was that it renounce its stated intention of eventually joining NATO. The Kremlin earlier this month said Sweden and Austria offered models of neutrality that Ukraine could adopt. Kiev rejected the proposal, and in his interview with Russian journalists, President Zelensky accused President Putin of dragging out negotiations and prolonging the conflict. The UN estimates that at least 1,100 civilians have died. More than 10 million have been displaced in a devastating war that has gone on far longer than Moscow leaders expected. And for her 4th birthday, little Daria got a bus ride out of Irpin as her present. Her family were among the last to leave the town of Kiev's northwest, scene of some of the worst fighting in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Let's take a look.
Єгор і Анатолій. Планували свічки, готували і торт. Все осталось там. Попала бомба в дом, и повылетали окна, двери. И решили уехать.
А цих останні дні не можна, з підвала не можна вилізти, не можна до дома. Всі стекла повитрогані, криші позривані і то все немає ні води, ні світу, вже неділь 3, ні газу, холодно і то сильно важко в північний час.
Вони взагалі дуже дружелюбні, дуже компанійські, але бояться вибухів, бояться стрілянини. Ну, такі. Оставити я їх не могла.
The UN said Friday that some 3.7 million people have fled Ukraine since Russia's invasion a month ago.
Well, we're here with our colleagues from UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. We've seen a really huge refugee situation erupt over the past few weeks. More than 3 million people have fled Ukraine, and many of them are coming through this border crossing. Today, as we speak, we're still seeing new arrivals, women, children, older people, people with disabilities, people with specific needs, and they're crossing through. There's a lot going on. They're receiving assistance, but many of them have really long, arduous journeys. And so there is a big effort by civil society, by humanitarians, by the authorities to really try and help and support them. So they're exhausted. There are also some children, and many children with families, but it's also the case that some children have come across by themselves. So they need to be, they need to have care arrangements in place. They need to be identified, placed in protection or care with the national authorities. But there are a whole suite of interventions that are happening to support people, because you'll see I mean, people are just holding their belongings, whatever they can find, whatever they've taken with them.
Poland was home to around 1.5 million Ukrainians. In total, more than 10 million people, over a quarter of the population in regions under government control before the February 24 invasion, are now thought to have fled their homes, including nearly 6.5 million who are internally displaced. Ukraine's refugee crisis is Europe's worst since World War II. The UN Children's Agency UNICEF said Thursday that 4.3 million children, more than half of Ukraine's estimated 7.5 million child population, has been forced to leave their homes. One month after the start of the war in Ukraine, UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador Orlando Bloom visited Moldova to meet children and families fleeing Ukraine as refugees. During the two-day trip, Bloom visited a UNICEF-supported Blue Dot space in Palanca, southwest Moldova, where women and children stop for rest and support as they cross the border from Ukraine in search of safety.
When we see conflict like this, and you realize that it's all about the children and what their future will be, and it's so uncertain because nothing is certain when they're fleeing a war.
Bucharest.
Bucharest? Oh, okay. And who did you come with?
А с кем ты приехала? Mother.
Your mama?
Yes.
Have you got brothers and sisters?
Братья и сестры есть? Yes, brother.
One brother, you and your brother?
Вас двое, да? Ты и братья? Yes.
Okay. And where did you come from today?
Откуда едешь? Откуда ты приехала? Одесса.
Odessa. Okay. How long did it take?
Как долго вы ехали? 4 часа где-то. Around 4 hours.
Okay. You left this morning?
Вы сегодня утром выехали оттуда? Yes.
Okay. And who'd you come with?
С кем ты приехала?
Thank you so much. Oh, thank you. That's so sweet. My daughter will love this. Thank you so much.
Bloom said many families and children he spoke with have not only left their homes, but also their school, friends, family members, and almost everything they own. Bloom, who also visited eastern Ukraine with UNICEF in 2016, said the blue dots set up by UNICEF on the borders are a vital first stop for mothers desperately looking for some respite and a safe place for children to play. UNICEF recently warned of the heightened risk of trafficking and exploitation as millions of children flee the war and countless others are displaced by violence inside Ukraine. In response, UNICEF and partners are scaling up blue dots in refugee hosting countries including Moldova, Poland, Romania, and Slovakia, and calling on governments in the region to put measures in place to keep children safe. This includes strengthening child protection screenings at border crossings. Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong will visit President Joe Biden at the White House next week to discuss Asian security issues and the response to Russia's war against Ukraine, officials said Friday. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said Biden and Lee will meet March 29. Psaki said in a statement that the two leaders will reaffirm the importance of the U.S.-Singapore strategic partnership. The president will review efforts to ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific and discuss Russia's unjustified war against Ukraine. She said they will also discuss the U.S.-led campaign to push back against Chinese expansion into disputed waters in international sea lanes in the Pacific, climate change, supply chain problems, and the situation in Myanmar. Singapore announced in February it was joining other pro-Western powers and imposing sanctions on Russia, including blocking financial transactions. The wealthy city-state rarely imposes sanctions on other countries without a decision from the United Nations Security Council. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, or BSP, said the executive department should do the heavy lifting in keeping inflation at bay as price surges stem from supply-side pressures. In a message to reporters over the weekend, the governor said non-monetary policy measures will be more effective in trying to keep commodity prices from rising too fast, instead of monetary policy interventions like rate hikes. The governor said since inflation pressures are coming from supply-side factors, a monetary response in terms of policy rate adjustment is neither appropriate nor responsive. An increase in policy rate will not change the reality that the energy and other commodities have surged owing to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Just last week, BSP Governor Benjamin Jokno decided to retain all monetary policy levers, keeping to his guidance of maintaining an accommodative stance of monetary policy for as long as possible to support economic recovery.
Meanwhile, the UN Conference on Trade and Development, or UNCTAD, said in its global economic outlook that the Russian invasion of Ukraine has been, quote, the main contributing factor to the potentially devastating 1% drop in projected global economic growth this year. Rising inflation is making matters worse for developing countries already weighed down by a $1 trillion debt burden to pay back to creditors. Here's UNCTAD Secretary General Rebecca Crinspan.
There is a rapidly worsening outlook for the world economy. And to think that this year, the year after 2 years of crisis with COVID-19, the average rate of growth of the world economy will be 2.6%, down from 5.5% last year and down from the projections that were made in the last quarter of 2021. The conditions are worsening for everybody because on top of the problem of climate change, and the IPCC report was mentioned, and you have been seeing these days, the reports on the Horn of Africa and the drought that is really affecting these countries. On top of that, we have still the consequences of COVID-19. We are not yet in a post-COVID era. You are seeing what is happening now in China, where new lockdowns are being put in place. And on top of that, we have the war in Ukraine. Grant is being carried by the developing countries because of the rise in prices of food, of energy, on fertilizers, that is very steep, and also the financial stretch under which the developing countries are already under.
All regions of the global economy will be adversely affected by this crisis, some more than others. And of course, there will be winners, particularly high commodity exporters, but the European Union will see a fairly significant downgrade in its growth performance this year, but so will parts of Central and Southern Asia as well.
UNCTAD noted that even relatively wealthy countries have already sought help from the international banking system, and that includes Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Egypt. And we'll be back with more news right after this break. Stay tuned.
Paano makakaboto yun? May kapansanan nga. Paano naman sa mga no read, no write? Hindi pa rin pwedeng bumoto.
Pwedeng bumoto! Ang mga illiterate o ang mga hindi marunong magbasa o magsulat, maging ang mga PWD, may karapatan silang bumoto.
Paano?
maaaring magdala ng mga kasama ang mga illiterate at PWD para maalalayan sila sa kanilang pagboto o sa mga pagkakataong kailangan nila ng tulong.
Kahit sino, pwede nilang isama?
No, dapat kamag-anak na kadugo ng botante ang kasama nila. Magdala lamang sila ng PWD ID. Ano bang kapansanan ng kakilala mo?
Ayun, nakahiga lang eh. Hindi makabangon. May sakit daw siyang love nut.
Hindi kapansanan yun. Alam ko na. Eto sa balutamol, balutromycin. Pakainin nyo para ganahan. Para sa karagdagang kaalaman, makipag-ugnayan lang sa pinakamalapit na barangay o bisitahin ang COMELEC website.
A public service message of Net25 for Mata ng Halalan 2022. Matatag, matapang, matapat.
Bangkok's iconic Grand Palace turned off its lights for an hour to celebrate Earth Hour. The Earth Hour is an annual event launched in 2007 by the World Wildlife Fund to call for action on climate change and other environmental issues. Take a look. And as President Duterte marks his 77th birthday today, his birthday wish is for a clean, fair, and honest elections come May 9. Let's listen in.
Fulfilled na ako sa lahat na bagay. Wala na akong mahingi. I am on my sunset of my life. I walk with a limp dahil sa numerous disgrasya sa motor. Hindi talaga ako nadala I'm coming home. God willing. Kita ko Pilipinas okay naman.
Meanwhile, Martin Andanar, his spokesperson, said his birthday wish for this year is to have a clean, fair, and honest election in May 2022, as he has time and again underscored the importance of a peaceful transfer of power as part of his enduring legacy. That he said in a press conference, or in a press statement. During the U.S.-led Summit for Democracy on December 10, 2021, the president said it would be his highest honor to turn over the reins of power to his successor, knowing that he did his best to serve the Filipino nation. Last month, the president said he had begun packing up his belongings in Malacanang and was looking forward to turning over the leadership of the country to his successor in June. The fate of national and local candidates will be decided by over 65 million Filipinos who are expected to cast their votes on May 9. And this will be the first polls that will be held under pandemic conditions.
INC members in Hanoi, Vietnam respond to the call of government to donate blood. Our correspondent from Vietnam, Ria Ramos, reports from Hanoi.
Members of Iglesia Ni Cristo here in Hanoi, Vietnam voluntarily donate blood here in National Institute of Hematology and Blood Transfusion. Volunteers adhere to the procedures of how to donate blood, such as filling up of forms, vital signs checking, and blood typing. One of the volunteers regularly join this kind of activity, for they believe that it's their way of helping the community.
We are excited to be part of this blood donation. Actually, this is our second time. Last year, December 11, we have also this kind of blood donation. This is in adherence with the call of the government of Vietnam.
Church of Christ, or Iglesia Ni Cristo, through the leadership of our beloved executive minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo,
continues to conduct this endeavor, social activity or blood donation, because it is in accordance with the teachings of the Bible that whenever you possibly can, do good to those who are in need. And we are thanking our executive minister for launching this kind of activity here in our district.
This socio-civic activity of the Iglesia Ni Cristo members in Hanoi, Vietnam is a proof that no matter where they are, they're always united with the church administration in doing good to those who are in need. Reporting from Hanoi, Vietnam, this is Ria Ramos. We live in interesting times.
The Iglesia Ni Cristo members from the District of Greater Toronto traveled to Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario to participate in an Aid to Humanity activity which was approved by the church administration under the leadership of the Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo. Among the recipients are Filipino students. Here's Ashley Sakmar from Toronto, Ontario.
Pursuing education is already a huge undertaking, but doing it while being far away from your family makes the road for any student even tougher. Add to that the financial challenges brought about by a global pandemic. It's during these challenging times when people find and form a new community to support each other. In Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Canada, the Felix Y. Manalo Foundation, as they have done many times in the past, has generously supported this growing Filipino community of students. Sunday, March 20th, marked the first time the FYM Foundation reached Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, 700 kilometers or a 7-hour drive from the city of Toronto. Led by their ministers and workers, the FYM Foundation held a special program to meet the Filipino students living far away from their families. Vitamins, medications, and personal hygiene products were also included in the food packages given to the Filipino students studying at Sault College.
One of the Sault College Student Union services is the food bank, which is an essential services that we provide to make sure that our students are well fed and they are food secured. And today we're receiving a generous donation from Church of Christ, and it was really great to see human and people coming together in the community group, helping each other and helping our students.
The program was a wonderful opportunity to meet other Filipinos who are on the same page, studying and working very hard while being very far away from their family. A story so common to most Filipinos as they strive hard to give their family a good, stable future. Ashley Sakmar, Eagle News, Toronto.
The Church of Christ in Thailand recently mobilized its members in a campaign to plant trees, an activity the church fully endorses to protect the environment. Here's Gila Pablo for the report.
Beautifying the community and to provide safer environment are some of the aims of the members of the Church of Christ that have gathered here in Bang Chang District, Rayong, Thailand, to voluntarily participate in the tree planting activity under the INC Giving and in cooperation with Felix Y. Manalo Foundation.
The volunteers traveled for approximately 2 hours from Thailand's capital city, Bangkok, to Rayong province, which is also known as one of Thailand's tourist destinations. The volunteers followed the imposed outdoor health protocols to effectively prevent the spread of the COVID-19. Wearing of masks, social distancing, and antigen tests were adhered by the volunteers.
ต้องขอขอบคุณท่านเอ็ดวาโดวีมาลานโดนะครับและสมาชิกนะครับที่มาช่วยปลูกป่าซึ่งเกิดประโยชน์แก่ชุมชนนะครับในท้องถิ่นนะครับซึ่งที่สาธารณะแห่งนี้เป็นสถานที่สาธารณะที่เรามีโครงการที่ทำเป็นปลอดชุมชนนะครับเป็นสวนสุขภาพรวมทั้งเป็นที่ปลูกพืชสมุนไพรนะครับให้เกิดประโยชน์ให้แก่พี่น้องประชาชนชาวสำนักท้อนนะครับ
Before we even plan for every church activity, the very first thing that
we do is to seek the help and guidance of the Almighty God through our prayers. Then other preparations kick in, such as coordination with government agencies, securing needed resources, and laying out the detailed plan and schedule. Everyone who witnessed this activity surely saw and felt the joy and enthusiasm of the church members who participated. This shows that our happiness truly comes from fulfilling our God-given duties, one of which is to be united with the church administration in all the church endeavors. We are indeed very grateful to our beloved Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, for allowing us to conduct this activity. We continue to promise po that we will be united with you in being zealous in our services to our Almighty God.
The preservation of natural environment has played an indeed significant role in Thailand to support different industries, especially the tourism sector. Despite the pandemic, Iglesia Ni Cristo members have expressed their volunteerism to help the community. In addition to conducting humanitarian acts, they're also committed in protecting the environment. Reporting from Rayong, Thailand, this is Sheila Pablo. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Gila, and thank you, Eliana, for keeping me company today here in ASEAN in Focus.
Thank you, Alma. And that's the latest news in the ASEAN region. Thank you for joining us today here in ASEAN in Focus. This is Eliana Faye Sebastian from EBC Vietnam Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
Thanks, Eliana, and thank you for joining us. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.